Jack Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on Mrs. Peterson's hovercart. Another day, another repair job at Nexus Station. The massive spaceport buzzed with activity around him, ships coming and going, aliens of every shape and color haggling over goods, and the constant mechanical symphony of engines, lifts, and repair tools. Jack wasn't anything special to look at. Just a human guy with messy brown hair, always wearing his lucky blue jumpsuit covered in grease stains and burn marks. But his hands, those were something else. People said Jack had magic fingers that could fix anything. Word spread across the station. If it's broken beyond hope, take it to the human. This particular Tuesday started like any other. Jack was packing up his tools when his buddy Tom rushed over, breathless and wide-eyed. Jack, the royal ships are docking. The Dragon Emperor himself is here. Jack shrugged. So what? Those fancy royal engineers won't even let station mechanics touch their precious ships. That's just it, Tom said, grinning. They're hiring. One position in the Royal Fleet's repair team. Everyone's talking about it. Against his better judgment, Jack found himself standing in line with 50 other hopefuls an hour later. Most were Vexians, known for their 6 arms and incredible precision work. Others were Bolt dwellers with their natural ability to see electrical currents. Jack was the only human. When his turn came, Jack handed over his application to a bored-looking official. Human? Really? The alien sneered but took the papers anyway. 3 days later, a royal announcement called all applicants to the main hangar. The crowd parted as Emperor Drac himself walked in. He wasn't what Jack expected. The Dragon Emperor stood 9 feet tall, his scaled skin shifting between deep red and gold depending on the light. His eyes, all 4 of them, looked ancient and cold. I've reviewed all applications, Drac announced, his voice booming across the hangar. And I find it amusing that a human would dare apply. The crowd turned to look at Jack, who stood straighter despite the mocking laughs around him. You humans, continued Drac, walking closer to Jack. So small, so fragile. With your simple brains and clumsy hands. Jack felt his face burning but kept his eyes locked with the Emperor's. Tell me, human, what makes you think you could serve in my fleet? I fix things others can't, Jack said simply. Been doing it all my life. The Emperor's laugh echoed through the hangar. Bold words. Well then, I have a challenge for you. Drac pointed toward the far end of the spaceport, where a massive ship sat silent and dark. Even from this distance, Jack could see it was unlike anything he'd ever laid eyes on. The ship's surface gleamed like polished obsidian, with strange patterns etched across its hull that seemed to shift and move if you looked too long. That is the Eternal Flame, my personal flagship, said Drac. Or it was once. For 80 years it has refused to move. 6 different engineering teams from across the galaxy have tried to repair it. All failed. The Emperor moved closer, towering over Jack. Here's my offer, human. Move my ship, without touching its engines, and it's yours. Gasps filled the hangar. Jack blinked in confusion. You heard correctly, Drac continued, clearly enjoying the moment. Move the Eternal Flame and I will sign over ownership to you. Full control, no strings attached. And if I fail? Jack asked. Then you publicly admit humans are inferior to all other species in the mechanical arts. And you leave Nexus Station forever. The Emperor's lips curled into what might have been a smile. Do we have a deal? Jack should have said no. It was clearly a trap. But something in the Emperor's mocking tone lit a fire in his gut. Deal? He said, extending his hand. The Emperor looked at Jack's oil-stained hand with disgust before finally shaking it. You have 1 week. Starting now. As Jack walked toward the legendary ship, cameras hovered around him, broadcasting the spectacle across the galaxy. Aliens placed bets on how quickly he would fail. Tom caught up with him halfway. Are you crazy? That ship is cursed. The Bolt dwellers said its systems are completely fried. The Vexians claimed its navigation core was missing entirely. Jack kept walking. Then I'll find another way. Standing before the Eternal Flame, Jack felt his confidence waver. The ship was enormous, at least 10 times bigger than any vessel he'd worked on before. Its design was unlike anything humans had created, with curves and angles that seemed to defy physics. As Jack placed his hand on the cold, dark hull, he felt something, a slight vibration, almost like a heartbeat. Maybe it was his imagination or maybe it was something else. But in that moment, Jack knew this ship wasn't broken. It was waiting. Jack stepped onto the Eternal Flame's entry ramp, toolbox in hand. The ship's main door, a massive oval of dark metal, didn't budge when he approached. No access panel, no obvious handle. Just smooth, cold surface. Some welcome, he muttered, running his fingers along the edge. After a few minutes of searching, he felt a slight depression, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Jack pressed his palm against it. Nothing happened. He tried again, applying more pressure. Still nothing. Frustrated, Jack leaned against the door, thinking. That's when he noticed it, tiny scratches around the depression. He pulled out his pocket light and looked closer. The scratches weren't random. They formed a pattern like a hand, Jack whispered. But not just any hand. He lined up his fingers differently, spreading them wider than a human normally would. The door hummed softly and slid open. Bingo! Inside, the ship was dark and cold. Emergency lights cast eerie blue shadows across corridors that seemed to curve in impossible ways. Jack shivered, not from the cold but from the strange feeling that the ship was somehow watching him. Hello? His voice echoed through empty hallways. No response, just the faint hum of dormant systems. For 3 days, Jack explored the massive vessel, mapping its layout on a small tablet. Most areas were locked tight, but he found ways around. Maintenance shafts, ventilation ducts, and occasionally doors that opened to his touch when they shouldn't have. On the 4th day, he discovered something odd in what appeared to be a crew quarters. While examining a wall panel, Jack noticed faint markings beneath years of grime. He cleaned the surface with a rag and stepped back, stunned. The markings were English. Actual human English. Property of Earth Alliance, Expedition Fleet, Jack read aloud. Vessel designation, Aurora. Aurora? Not Eternal Flame? Jack's heart raced as he scrubbed more panels throughout the ship. More human writing appeared. Maintenance logs, crew rosters, navigation notes. Some dated back over 300 years. This doesn't make sense, Jack told his reflection in a dusty control panel. Humans didn't have this kind of technology 3 centuries ago. We barely had space stations. Unless everything they'd been taught about human history was wrong. Meanwhile, in his royal chambers, Emperor Drac watched Jack through surveillance feeds. His advisor stood nervously behind him. The human continues to waste time, one said. He hasn't even looked at the engine room. Drac's scales darkened with annoyance. Because he's not a fool. The engine isn't the problem. On screen, Jack was carefully tracing what looked like a circuit diagram on his tablet, comparing it to markings on the wall. What is he doing now? Drac demanded. He appears to be mapping the secondary power distribution network, an advisor replied, sounding puzzled. But that system is redundant. It hasn't been used since the ship was first built, Drac finished, leaning forward. Interesting. By the 5th day, Jack had developed a theory. The Eternal Flame, or Aurora as it was originally named, wasn't broken. It was locked. The ship had deliberately shut itself down and hidden its true nature from anyone who wasn't human. Late that night, Jack found himself in what had to be the true bridge, not the ceremonial command center where the Emperor would sit, but a smaller, more practical control room hidden behind what appeared to be a storage closet. They hid you, Jack whispered to the ship, and you let them think you were broken rather than serve them. He placed his hand on what looked like a simple metal plate. The entire room suddenly illuminated. Dormant screens flickered to life around him, displaying information in English. Stasis protocol active, read the main screen. Authorization required for reactivation. Jack smiled. I knew it. In his chambers, Emperor Drac sat up straight, eyes wide as the surveillance feed showed the hidden bridge lighting up. Impossible, he whispered. How did he find it? His advisor stammered. My Emperor, we didn't even know that room existed. Get me everything we have on human DNA patterns, Drac ordered. Now. Back on the ship, Jack worked through the night, deciphering the stasis protocol. He discovered that the ship had been programmed to recognize only human operators. When the Dragon Empire had seized it centuries ago, the Aurora had activated its final defense, a complete system lockdown that could only be reversed by a human command sequence. As dawn broke on the 6th day, Jack stood in the hidden bridge, hands hovering over the main control panel. He'd spent hours piecing together the reactivation sequence from fragments of information scattered throughout the ship. Here goes nothing, he said and began typing. Somewhere deep in the ship, a powerful hum began to build, the sound of systems awakening after decades of artificial sleep. In the royal palace, alarms blared as monitoring equipment detected the change. Emperor Drac rushed to the viewport, his 4 eyes fixed on the distant silhouette of the Eternal Flame as lights began to flicker across its hull. Get me to that ship, he snarled. Now. The ship hummed around Jack as he made his way deeper into its maze-like interior. The walls seemed to glow slightly brighter wherever he walked, as if the vessel itself was waking up to his presence. He'd been inside for nearly a week now, sleeping on the floor of what he assumed was once a crew quarters, eating the emergency rations he'd brought along. Today was different. Today the ship had started talking to him. It wasn't talking with words exactly. Rather, doors that had been sealed shut suddenly opened as he approached. Screens flickered to life showing schematics and diagrams he somehow understood despite their complexity. It was as if the ship was guiding him somewhere. "What are you trying to show me?" Jack whispered, following the trail of activating systems. The path led him down, deep into the belly of the eternal flame, to areas that hadn't seen footsteps in decades. Finally, he reached a sealed door unlike any other on the ship. It was round like a bank vault with a handprint scanner at its center. Jack hesitated, then placed his palm against the scanner. The door unlocked with a hiss of ancient air seals breaking. "Holy!" The words died in his throat as lights automatically activated, revealing a vast circular chamber. At its center stood a pillar of light, a holographic projection showing detailed schematics of the ship, rotating slowly. But what made Jack's heart skip a beat were the words clearly visible at the bottom of the projection. Earth Alliance Vessel Aurora. Project Prometheus, 2157. "That's impossible," Jack breathed. Humans weren't even on Mars in 2157, let alone building ships like this. He walked slowly around the projection, studying the details. According to the date stamp, this ship was over 300 years old. And undeniably human in origin. Jack touched the projection and it changed, showing historical logs. He watched, mesmerized as the truth unfolded before him. The Aurora was humanity's first attempt at a jump-capable starship, built in secret by a coalition of Earth nations. It had been thought lost during its maiden voyage, presumed destroyed in a catastrophic engine failure. But it hadn't been destroyed. It had been stolen. The logs showed a boarding party of reptilian aliens, early Dragon Empire pioneers, discovering the ship adrift after a jump drive malfunction. They'd killed the human crew and taken the vessel as their own. But they couldn't fully control it. The ship's core systems were genetically keyed to human operators. "So they disguised their theft," Jack murmured as more images played out. "They built their empire on stolen human technology, passing it off as their own invention." The final log entry showed how the first Dragon Emperor had modified the ship's exterior to match their aesthetic, renaming it the Eternal Flame. They'd used what systems they could access to reverse engineer their own fleet of ships. But the heart of the Aurora, its true power, remained locked away, responding only to human DNA. "Until now," Jack said, placing his hand on the central console. The entire chamber lit up, and a synthesized voice spoke for the first time. "Human DNA pattern confirmed. Primary systems reactivation sequence initiated." Jack felt the floor vibrate beneath him as the ship's true power began to awaken. Screens around the chamber displayed systems coming online one by one. Propulsion, navigation, weapons, shields, all capabilities far beyond what the Dragon Empire had managed to unlock. He was so absorbed in the spectacle that he didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. "What have you done?" Emperor Drax's voice boomed from the doorway. Jack turned to find the Emperor standing there, flanked by 4 armed guards. Drax's scales had darkened to a deep crimson, a sign of extreme agitation. "I fixed your ship," Jack replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just like you asked." "Fixed?" Drax snarled, stalking into the room. His eyes widened as he saw the holographic display showing the ship's true origins. "You've activated restricted systems. Systems no one should access." "You mean systems you couldn't access," Jack countered. "Because they weren't yours to begin with." Drax's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You know nothing, human. I know this ship was built by humans. I know your entire empire is built on technology you stole from us centuries ago." Jack gestured to the historical logs still playing behind him. "And I know why the Eternal Flame, the Aurora, never worked for you. It was waiting for one of its rightful pilots." Drax's scales rippled with fury. "Guards, remove this human from my ship immediately." The guards moved forward, weapons raised. Jack backed against the console, heart racing. "Your ship," he said. "We had a deal. If I could move it." "The deal is void. This room is forbidden. The information here is classified at the highest Imperial level." Drax shouted, his voice echoing off the metal walls. The guards were almost upon Jack when the ship's voice spoke again. "Threat detected to authorized human operator. Security protocol engaged." A shimmering energy field suddenly appeared between Jack and the approaching guards. They stopped, confused. "What is this?" Drac demanded, pounding his fist against the barrier. Held firm. Jack felt the console warm beneath his hand. Information flooded his mind. Schematics, controls, capabilities. The ship was bonding with him, sharing everything it knew. "The Aurora recognizes me as its captain now," Jack said, a smile spreading across his face as understanding dawned. "And it's not very happy about how you've been treating it for the last 80 years. The lights throughout the chamber pulsed once, as if in agreement. The eternal flame, or Aurora as Jack now knew her, was fully awake. Lights blazed from every port and window. The once dead consoles now glowed with activity. The ship's engines, dormant for decades, hummed with power that Jack could feel through the deck plates. Standing on the main bridge, the real one, not the ceremonial command center the Dragon Emperors had used, Jack ran his hands over controls that responded to his touch like old friends. The ship was speaking to him, not with words, but through images and sensations fed directly into his mind. "Show me what you can do," he whispered. In response, a holographic display materialized in the air before him, showing capabilities that made his breath catch. Jump drives that could cross galaxies. Defense systems that could repel entire fleets. And speed, incredible speed. The energy barrier separating Jack from Emperor Drac and his guards still shimmered between them. Drac pounded against it, scales shifting between deep red and black with rage. "This ship belongs to the Dragon Empire," he roared. "It has been ours for generations." Jack tapped a command into the console. The barrier vanished, but before the guards could move, a larger hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed the original theft of the Aurora in perfect detail. The boarding of the disabled human vessel, the murder of its crew, the first Dragon Emperor claiming the ship as his own. "Your ancestors built nothing," Jack said quietly. "They stole a ship they didn't understand, couldn't fully control, and built an empire by reverse engineering the parts they could access." Drac's guards looked at each other uncertainly, weapons lowering slightly. Even they couldn't deny what they were seeing. The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. "These are fabrications. The ship is creating false histories." "The Aurora doesn't lie," Jack replied. "And you know it." For a moment, the massive alien seemed at a loss. Then his expression shifted, scales settling into a calculated calm. "Very well," Drac said, straightening to his full 9-foot height. "Perhaps there is some truth to these records. But our deal was for you to move the ship. Nothing more." Jack gestured around them. "It's moved. Systems are online. The engines are ready. I've fulfilled my part of the bargain." "Barely," Drac sneered. "Any fool can activate dormant systems with the right genetic key. But can you fly her? Can you truly master this vessel?" Jack sensed the trap but said nothing. "I propose a new challenge," Drac continued. "Pilot the Eternal Flame, or Aurora if you prefer, through the shattered nebula. Complete the Imperial proving course and the ship is yours as agreed." The guards exchanged worried glances. One leaned forward to whisper something to the Emperor, who waved him off impatiently. "The shattered nebula?" Jack asked, though the ship was already showing him images of a vast cloud of stellar debris, jagged fragments of planets and stars swirling in deadly patterns. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Simply a test of skill. The same course all royal pilots must complete." Drac's mouth curled in what passed for a smile among his kind. Though of course none attempted in a vessel of this size. Most would consider it impossible. Jack studied the nebula images the ship was projecting for him. Electromagnetic disturbances that would blind most navigation systems. Chunks of rock and metal large enough to shear through hulls. Radiation pockets that could fry a pilot in seconds. What Drac didn't know was that Jack had grown up on the fringes of the Baker asteroid belt back in the Sol system. His father had run a salvage operation, picking through the most dangerous sections where other pilots wouldn't go. By age 12, Jack could thread their little salvage ship through gaps that seemed barely wider than his arm. "Fine," Jack said. "The nebula it is." Drac's smile widened, showing rows of pointed teeth. "Excellent. We depart immediately. I've already arranged for witnesses." 6 hours later, the Eternal Flame hovered at the edge of the shattered nebula. Around it floated dozens of smaller vessels, news ships, royal observers, and curious onlookers. Word had spread quickly across the sector. A human was attempting the impossible in the legendary flagship of the Dragon Empire. From a royal observation vessel, Emperor Drac's voice boomed over the communication system. "The terms are simple. Complete the Imperial proving course through the nebula. The route is marked on standard navigation charts. Deviate from it and you forfeit. Fail to emerge from the other side within 2 standard hours and you forfeit. Jack sat alone on the bridge, the ship's consciousness merged partly with his own. Through the viewports, the nebula stretched before him, a churning mass of destruction cloaked in deadly beauty. He expects me to fail, Jack murmured. The ship responded with a sensation that felt remarkably like a shrug. Jack smiled. Yeah, I get that a lot. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the navigation controls. Let's show them what humans can really do. As the eternal flame surged forward into the nebula, Jack felt a moment of perfect clarity. This wasn't just about winning a ship. It was about changing humanity's place in the galaxy, revealing a heritage that had been buried for centuries. Behind him, observation drones hovered, broadcasting every moment to trillions of beings across dozens of worlds. Most were already placing bets on how quickly he would fail. Jack took a deep breath as the first massive fragments of planetary debris loomed ahead. The Aurora responded to his thoughts almost before he had them, systems adjusting with microscopic precision. Ready or not, he whispered to the waiting galaxy, here we come. The first impact rocked the eternal flame just seconds after entering the nebula. A chunk of rock the size of a small shuttle glanced off the forward shields, sending vibrations through the entire ship. Sorry about that, Jack muttered, his hands dancing across the controls. Still getting a feel for your reflexes. The ship didn't reply with words, but Jack felt something like amused tolerance in his mind. The Aurora had waited centuries for a human pilot, it could forgive a bumpy start. Outside the viewports, the shattered nebula lived up to its name. Fragments of destroyed planets swirled in deadly patterns, some barely visible until you were right on top of them. Pockets of radiation glowed in eerie blues and greens, beautiful but deadly. Navigation buoys marked the official course, a winding path that even small ships struggled to navigate, let alone a vessel the size of the eternal flame. In the Royal Observation Ship, Emperor Drac watched with his advisors, a satisfied smile on his scaled face. The human will never make it past the crystal fields, one advisor said. The ship is simply too large. Drac nodded. When he fails, broadcast it across all channels. Let everyone see human arrogance put in its place. Back on the Aurora, Jack approached the first major obstacle, the crystal fields, a dense cloud of razor-sharp crystalline fragments that could slice through hull plating like paper. The official route called for a slow, winding path through a relatively clear section. Jack had other ideas. This way is faster, he told the ship, angling toward what appeared to be a solid wall of deadly crystals. At the last possible second, Jack rolled the massive vessel 90 degrees to starboard and accelerated. The eternal flame shot through a gap barely wider than its profile, crystals scraping so close to the hull that they left glowing trails in the shields. On the observation vessels, aliens gasped. Some covered their eyes. Others cheered at the recklessness. Impossible. Drac hissed, leaning forward in his seat. No pilot would dare. Jack smiled as the Aurora fed him data faster than any normal display could show. He wasn't seeing with just his eyes anymore, but through the ship's sensors. A complete 360-degree awareness of everything around them. His hands moved with certainty, guiding the massive vessel through spaces it shouldn't have fit through. They approached the radiation rapids, streams of deadly energy that could cook a pilot inside their own ship. The official course wound slowly around them. Jack flew straight through, the Aurora's ancient shields easily absorbing punishment that would have destroyed any Imperial vessel. 40% of course complete, Jack said aloud. And we're still at 93% shield strength. Halfway through, they encountered the gravity wells, collapsed star fragments that created unpredictable gravity fields. Ships had been known to spend days navigating around them. Jack flew directly toward the largest one, using its pull to slingshot the eternal flame through 3 more obstacles in rapid succession. The maneuver shaved 20 minutes off their projected time. On the Imperial observation ship, Drac's advisors had fallen silent. The Emperor himself stood rigid, his scales a mottled pattern of disbelief. He flies as if born to it, one whispered. As if the ship is an extension of his body. He cheats, Drac snarled. There must be a trick. But there was no trick, just generations of human instinct finally reunited with the technology it was meant to command. The final challenge was the Needle, a straight, narrow corridor of clear space through the densest part of the nebula. Ships typically crawled through at minimal speed, sensors straining to stay centered. Jack hit the Needle at full thrust. The eternal flame shot through the corridor like a bullet down a gun barrel, emerging into clear space on the other side with a flash of light as debris burned off its shields. On the observation ships, silence fell. Then one by one viewers began to cheer. The broadcast drones captured the moment when Jack Miller, human mechanic, completed the impossible course in just under 1 hour, half the allowed time and a new record by a margin that seemed almost absurd. Emperor Drax's ship was the last to arrive at the exit point. The massive ruler stepped onto the Eternal Flames ceremonial deck with his guards and advisors trailing behind. His face was a mask of barely controlled fury. Jack waited, standing tall beside the captain's chair he now rightfully claimed. "You have completed the challenge?" Drax said stiffly. "I did," Jack replied. The course record previously stood at 3 hours, 14 minutes. For a ship 1/10 this size. Drax's eyes narrowed. "How?" Jack shrugged. "I'm good with my hands." Around them, broadcast drones captured every word. Trillions watched across the galaxy as the mighty Dragon Emperor faced the human who had humiliated him. "In the tradition of my people, I am bound by my word," Drax finally said. "The ship is yours." He removed a medallion from around his neck, the symbol of imperial ownership, and placed it in Jack's hand. "But know this, human," he added quietly. "You have made an enemy today." Jack nodded. "And you've learned a truth your family has hidden for centuries. Seems fair." After Drac and his entourage departed, Jack sat alone in the captain's chair, feeling the aurora hum contentedly around him. "So," he said, "it's just you and me now. What should we do first?" The ship's answer came as images in his mind, star charts showing dozens of worlds across multiple galaxies. Each marked with a simple symbol, a circle with a small arrow pointing outward. The ancient Earth symbol for Mars, humanity's first colony. "Are these?" Jack's voice caught in his throat. More images filled his mind. Human settlements on distant worlds established before the aurora was stolen. Colonies lost to history, forgotten by Earth, yet still out there among the stars. "We're not alone," Jack whispered, tears filling his eyes. "Humans, we're not just some backwater species." The final image showed Earth at the center of a vast network. Not an empire but a federation of worlds that had once spanned the galaxy. Jack stood, a new purpose filling him. "Plot a course to the nearest human colony," he told the ship. "It's time to remind humanity who we really are." The Eternal Flames engines hummed to life, preparing for their first willing journey in 80 years. As the ship moved away from the nebula, aliens throughout the sector watched in awe. The age of dragon dominance was ending. The age of humanity was just beginning.